Welcome you all to this very interesting series of classes and a very interesting subject. Um, we are going to talk about human behavior. Any study on crew resource management has to invariably precede or a class in human behavior takes the center stage because that's the very core for several things which are happening. So we are going to a little bit talk about the theories and how human behavior is leading to several interactions and how it leads to errors and this subject is very vast. It's very vast, and we are going to touch upon some aspects so as to give a good brief, a good introduction, and it will give you a basic understanding of the theories and several other aspects of human behavior. Okay, what is psychology? Psychology is an academic and applied discipline that involves the scientific study of mental functions. Now, that's the definition, and I don't have to elaborate on this particular point. But let's dwell a little bit more on this particular on the study of this particular subject. Why do we need to learn about human behavior? The reasons are very simple. Finally, we want all human beings in our organization to behave in a particular predictable way for different situations. We don't want people coming out with different behaviors in an unpredictable manner uh, for different situations. Then it will be very difficult to make the organization run in coherence. So we we want to understand the human behavior. If we are able to understand human behavior well, then we are able to come out with solutions for aberrations in human behavior or wants of human behavior or how they are going to modify the behavior, etc. We are going to be able to find solutions. So that's the importance why we should understand human behavior and apply those theories in practice and see so that the organization will benefit and people in the organization will uh, behave in a coherent and a predictable manner which aids organizational growth and does not uh, prove to be an impediment. Okay, what are the factors that would affect human behavior? Human behavior can be impacted by many factors, uh, including genetics composition of the particular individual. Understanding the relationship between the genetics and the behavior, it's not an easy subject. It's difficult, right? But it is rewarding if you are able to understand the genetical composition and predict the human behavior. There's nothing better than that. But it's a very complex subject, and lots of research is going on. And we only hope that we are able to find better and better solutions to our uh, problems in aviation and improve the flight safety aspects. Okay, what are the demographic factors that affect the human behavior? One whole lot of them, and it's a very interesting subject. Once we start talking about it, we can go on and on. But the aim is not to uh, talk about this in this particular lesson. We will go through the factors, of course. Culture, the culture from which an individual comes, goes a long way in the way he will behave. In an airline which I worked earlier, we had pilots coming from almost 40 plus different countries and working. They all came from different cultures and different traditions and values, as you can see in this particular slide. Uh, each one had his own behavioral pattern. Nevertheless, because of our environment, we are able to uh, follow uniform work culture in our workplaces, keeping aside all our cultural and other differences aside. And when we come in a uniform, we are able to behave in a particular way. But has the problem been solved? No, not really. We still have a long way, and therefore we are discussing the subject, and lots of study is going on this particular subject. Anyway, let's go through the further other factors. Culture, traditions, values, attitude, ethics, and motivation. And all these may by and large sound and may point very similar, but I can tell you, once you start discussing and analyzing and thinking in depth, then you will find that each one is peculiar by its own nature. That means each of this factor is peculiar in its nature. So I will surely expect you all to give a little bit thought and give a critical analysis to these particular aspects: culture, traditions, values, attitudes, ethics, and motivation. Okay, ever since the days of Sigmund Freud, there are several social scientists did several great research work and came out with several acceptable theories. That is more important, which have to be acceptable by the society at large. So they came out with they collated lots of information, and then they did great research, and they came out with some acceptable theories on human behavior. Now, this is not a class on human resources management. I'm just going to cursory introduce you to one or two theories like that. And those of you who want to learn more, there are plenty of material available on the net, and books are available. You can go through them. But the point is, there are models and theories which have been already spelt out, and we have to relate to them and try to explain and derive our meaning for our organization, our people, and our behavioral patterns, and to let us take the best make the best use of our knowledge on these particular aspects. Okay, one of the earliest social scientists who did work on this particular subject is Maslow, and his theory is called Maslow's theory of hierarchical needs. It's very popular and very well accepted and uh, theories. Let's go. I will just cursory introduce you to that. What he came out with is there are layers of needs of the human being. Once the one particular layer gets fulfilled, the human being seeks to fulfill the next layer of the need. Now, from the bottom, let's go through it. First is physiological need. As per his theory, the basic requirement of any human being is to fulfill his physiological needs. What is physiological need? Such as food, thirst, hunger, thirst. So food, water, and if it gets cold, clothing. These are all the physiological needs. So if you were to study the earliest days of a human being, most portion of human being most portion of the day he spent in fulfilling the physiological needs, that he went hunting, searched for food, came back, and so on and so forth. So then if that were to be fulfilled, if that was fulfilled, then his next layer of needs were the security needs. Now, just because I talked about the olden day man doesn't mean this thing doesn't hold good even now. All these things holds good even now, but it may not be so glaringly apparent. Anyway, security needs means we want a place to live, we want our lives to be secure, we want a dignified life, and all that. That is security needs. Then once that is fulfilled, then we want to be included in, we want the sense of belongingness. uh, as you grow old, and you will find that they want to be included in several groups and all. That's what uh, the meaning of belongingness needs. And of course, self-esteem needs and self-actualization needs comes the last. Self-esteem needs is a little bit of ego, or they want to be respected for what they have achieved in life and for what they are, and for their abilities and for their thoughts. Uh, uh, the parents, the grandparents want to be well respected by the children, grandchildren, and these are all constitute the self-esteem needs. And of course, self-actualization needs evolves around out of in self needs. I mean, nobody else has to coax you to this. We seek to explain our lives ourselves. That happens probably a little bit later in our lives, and so that is called the self-actualization needs. Even though Maslow theory as per the theory, these needs get fulfilled in a layered manner. That's what he tried to explain, and for most population it does hold good. It does hold good, but there are cases who are able to jump this and go to different levels. That means without having fulfilled security needs, he is able to go to self actualization needs. This is what is something which you are not able to explain by this model. Of course, you are not. That means this model has failed, but we are not able to explain with other models as well how a person can get to self actually. The sadhus in Himalayas, his other needs have not been fulfilled. How he is seeking to towards self actualization needs, it's something which is uh, un, unexplainable any of the conventional theories on human behavior. So that's where I will conclude. I've been able to give a brief introduction to Maslow's theories. Of course, there's a great depth of meaning to this theory, and a lot of repercussions which one can deeply study. Another popular theory is this HERZBERG'S two-factor theory. As per his theory, there are only two factors that affect, basically drive human behavior. That there are motivating factors and the hygiene factors. That is, the motivators are the challenging work, responsibility, recognition, etc. And the hygiene factors are the status, job security, salary, fringe benefits, etc. So he concluded that these are the two. Of course, if you notice very closely, this is a combination of the different factors as brought out by Maslow. As per this theory, there is a subtle difference which I want to point out. Now, the motivators, like such as challenging work, responsibility, etc., they provide positive satisfaction. That is for sure. I mean, one doesn't need to explain. But as per the theory, the hygiene factors such as status, job security, etc., providing them doesn't necessarily will increase the motivation level. That's what the theory says. Whereas absence of this will result in demotivation. So just because you provided, you don't have to expect that everybody will be satisfied with what we are given. There are always people who are dissatisfied. But of course, if you don't provide them with the hygiene factors, then surely they are going to be demotivated. That's the subtle difference between HERZBERG'S theory and Maslow's theory. Next is a very important and very talked about theory in the entire study of human behavior. So it is important to know what theory says. That is McGregor's theory X and theory Y. So what the theory X proposes is that the average person dislikes work. He also said there are two types of people. There are two types of human behavior which can be recognized and identified. That is, the average person dislikes work. People must be forced with threat of punishment. The average person prefers to be directed. The average person wants to avoid responsibility and relatively ambitious and wants security above all else. And that's what theory X of McGregor's theory X and Y says. So, what does theory Y say? It is participative style. He says some people are very good. Their work is natural and playful for them, and people apply self-control and self-direction. Even when somebody is not noticing, that they will not do any mischief, etc. Commitment to objective is a function of rewards. That means you have to, as against punishment for not working as per theory X, here rewarding is a mechanism by which the individual will be motivated. The average person seeks responsibility, and use of higher degree imagination and creativity by individuals is a very characteristics of this theory Y. So he proposed that there are these two different sets of people. So as long as you are able to recognize these two, you will be able to modify your control over them in an appropriate manner, and you are able to bring the best out in them. That's the gist of McGregor's theory of X and Y. Okay, yet another important subject of study, that is the organizational behavior. So far, we discussed individuals' behavior and what are the theories and how we should be able to understand humans' behavior, how to control it, and then expect a predictable outcome. That's what we have been discussing. But people tend to behave differently in groups. They may be good and nice individually, but when it comes to groups, they may join the gang and join the mischief. Or there may be some people who are theory X controlled type of behavior. That means lazy and hate to work and things like that. But when it comes to group work, they may well cope up with the work which is assigned to them, and they may even be aid to the group. The point is, organizational behavior is another subject of study which we need to understand so that we are able to come out with methods and strategies to modify people's collective behavior. Okay, this human behavior and organizational behavior is one subject which we learned almost throughout our management studies, every day almost a class. The point what I'm trying to say, it's not a subject which can be covered in one particular class, but the idea of bringing out is that every manager eventually has to understand that such concepts do exist, and if you are aspiring to be a manager in an airline, you have to widen your knowledge on this particular on these particular aspects. Anyway, let's get on to organizational behavior as a subject. Studies on how organization affects individual behavior and vice versa. It is an interdisciplinary field that includes sociology, psychology, communication, and management, and how individuals behave in groups, and how to improve productivity of the group. This is last is the most important. So, the subject, as I told you, is vast. Okay, let us narrow down to little bit closer aspect of this organizational behavior, so that it will form a good basis for our future classes. First is organizational culture and organizational architecture. Culture, of course, we know how we developed our systems, how we defined our interrelationship. When I joined an airline, the CEO of the uh, company, he would make it a point to address all the new may address the new employees in the first week, and he would write his mobile number on the board in bold letters, and he would say anyone can contact me at any point in time. So that's the kind of culture which he has set in, and it's one of the very successful airlines now. The point is that's the culture or organization architecture is the way you created your hierarchical systems, or how easy it's to get across. I'm sure you all heard of GE, General Electric. What I heard from someone, the bureaucracy in General Electric is much more than even in some governmental systems. The point is, as the organization grew, they had to grow, and the organizational architecture became more and more rigid, you could say. Anyway, space, organization space, influence of spatial environment on individual behavior, and design, of course, authority, roles, processes, etc. These are all the organization aspects which we need to take care to influence better outcomes of our behavior. More critical details, objective of the organization, vision and philosophy, command and control structure, authority, processes which have been laid out, policies, procedures, orders and instructions, how they will be disseminated and how easy they are to follow and implement and then follow. And training, of course, is one of the very important aspects in an organizational behavior. And some organizations spend lots of money and resources to towards training of the people. And of course, in an aviation environment, definitely training is a core aspect in any aviation environment. And of course, you would have realized it by now. Performance appraisal and individual and organizational development, of course, that means individuals developmental aspiration should be coherent with the organizational development aspirations, and correlated. Otherwise, there is going to be a mismatch, and there's going to give rise to dissatisfaction levels. Anyway, so these are the aspects which we would like to touch upon in different phases of study. Okay, we come to the end of the lesson, and the point of this subject of the study is make us understand that we cannot be satisfied at all times. There will be points of dissatisfaction throughout our careers because of several reasons, as we discussed above. And the organization also not expect 100% straight, upright, and behavior from the individuals because of his own phases in which he is going to grow in the organization, and he will have his own reasons due to several factors, once again, which anyway, at every point, the point of subject of the study is at every point, the organization and the individual are able to reconcile the differences, and there are mechanisms, there are meetings once a while to understand each other's and to explain each other's positions. It may not be possible for the management to keep giving salary rises every year, and it's unfair for the pilots or the employees to keep expecting salary rise. Similarly, you cannot expect everybody else every 100% performance level from the individuals at all the time. There would be some minor lapses, and so we are able to get along well with each other by different ways and means. Otherwise, there will be cracks in our walls, and the bricks will fall off, and the organizational wall, will lose its strength. That's what we need to understand. This has to be understood clearly by the management of the organization and individuals of the organization. Different sections of individuals, that means the people are working at different levels. So each one is able to understand their responsibilities, their privileges, and they are able to accept the other person's privileges, responsibilities, and so we are able to get along well with each other very well. So that's the sign of a good organization and good individuals in an organization as well. I hope you found the introduction to the subject very interesting, and the subject of study is vast, and every manager every young person who is going to be a manager in the airline, and every person working at different levels, I'm sure your curiosity has been kindled, so you are going to uh, try and gather more and more information on the subject. And I thank you all for going through this lesson, and please feel free to comment critically, and go through my further lessons on the subject on my YouTube channel and my website. Thank you all once again.